I have to say, watching Gavi against Real Madrid was spectacular. For large parts of the game, he was responsible for man-marking Bellingham, and he handled it brilliantly. He stayed close constantly and used his intensity well. Using him like that completely prevented Bellingham from influencing the game. There is a reason Bellingham finished with 0 chances created and 0 goals. Barca found a way to neutralize him, and Gavi did it both in the air and on the ground. I did not expect him to look this good already, but he genuinely looked world class, and it has been a trend for a while now. So it made me think, what is actually Barca's best midfield for the biggest games? Because I think it's a very interesting discussion to have. First of all, I think it's important to stop thinking too much about fixed positions. Modern football is more about characteristics, traits, how profiles complement each other. Just look at the defensive midfielders today. Many contribute with goals. That was not how it was back in the days. Casemiro is a good example, and so is Marc Bernal. So instead of obsessing over labels, we should ask, what qualities does a midfield actually need? Now, when it comes to Barca, I honestly don't think we have a pure defensive midfielder. A lot of people will call Marc Bernal one, but I actually think it limits it, because his attacking qualities are so strong. He has even played as a 10 in his youth days. So Marc Bernal should not become overly restricted positionally. He should be allowed to move forward and influence the final third. So for me, the goal is not to build a rigid midfield where we just obsess over positions. The goal should instead be to create a fluid midfield, one with the right characteristics. The question is then again, how do we achieve that? Because honestly, there are several possible answers. For me, Pedri starting is non-negotiable. He's the heart of the team, the player we want constantly involved on the ball. Instead, we should ask who complements him. With Frenkie, I would say we have another midfielder operating at his rhythm. Both are geniuses on the ball, and Hansi Flick clearly trusts them. But at the same time, there's a lack of defensive edge. That is why Marc Bernal is so interesting. He adds physicality, coverage, presence, defensive traits we require. But then again, at the same time, he is 18 years old. He doesn't have to be a starter in every game. And that is where Gavi enters the discussion. Because Gavi is brutal defensively. He covers ground aggressively, he attacks duels, and there is another underrated aspect of his game, the fouls. Seriously, we joke about the yellow cards, but I genuinely think his fouls are valuable. Because for Barca, stopping transitions can be far more valuable than the free kick itself, especially when you consider the high defensive line and the offside trap we run. If an opponent turns and attacks open space, it can become extremely dangerous immediately. So when Gavi commits those tactical fouls in midfield, he actually protects the structure. Against Real Madrid, he committed 3 fouls, and honestly, I thought all of them were useful. Those fouls and what Gavi does is part of defending. So when you pair Gavi with Pedri, it starts making sense. I worried about the lack of height initially, but Gavi compensates with his intensity. Timing, aggression, he constantly gets ahead of attackers. He forces turnovers all the time. Still, I would say that Frenkie gives us more in possession, which means there are also games where starting Pedri and Frenkie makes a lot of sense. But maybe there is a way to include all three. Hear me out. Frenkie's profile is honestly unique, and I think he's quite misunderstood as a footballer. When he takes many touches, it's because he thinks 3 steps ahead. He understands football at an elite level. He never passes responsibility to teammates under pressure, and is never afraid to play into pressure himself. That is rare. Most modern players immediately search for the free man. Frenkie, he creates the free man. That is the difference, and because of that, I think he impacts games simply by being on the pitch. Honestly, I think he can play almost any position. Center back, box-to-box midfielder, double pivot, interior midfielder. We have seen it all for Barca. He is just an exceptional all-round footballer. So when I think about Pedri and Gavi, which profile would complement them? Maybe more attacking dynamism, forward runs, height, presence in the box, creativity. That could actually be Frenkie. And no, I'm not suggesting we play him as a pure number 10. That is definitely not the point, because as I said, this is not about fixed positions. It is all about complementary characteristics and what specific games require. Let me explain further. With Gavi, Pedri and Frenkie together, Barca could build in any possible way. Just think about PSG, Fabian Ruiz, Vitinha, Joao Neves. Just look how fluid they are under Luis Enrique. The same idea could apply here. Gavi would probably be the player most responsible defensively, stopping transitions and protecting the structure. This would again free Pedri and Frenkie and allow them to interpret the game, interchange positions, push forward when needed, drop deeper when control is required. And I have said for a while that Pedri should influence the final third more, simply because he's brilliant there. This setup could allow that. At the same time, Frenkie has become very good at identifying moments where he can attack space. We saw it against Real Madrid when he ran through a goal and beat Rudiger for pace, and we saw it against Espanyol for the assist he provided for before Rashford. He has timing, engine, acceleration, all the things a player needs. Then we also have to consider the games against low blocks. In those moments, maybe Pedri and Frenkie could drop deeper and Gavi could push higher. That creates another dynamic. More direct attacks, more counter-pressing, more chaos around the opponent's box. Lose the ball, then immediately win it back. That is what Gavi gives us. He can turn possession losses into chances. But maybe the best part of this midfield is the control. Because I genuinely think that Pedri, Gavi and Frenkie could create a natural rhythm between them. And in the Champions League especially, that balance matters. Too often Barca become rushed, too emotional, too chaotic, and we often get punished. I have spoken about this before. Teams do not need to dominate Barca for 90 minutes. Sometimes all it takes is being better for like 5 to 10 minutes. Because during that time period, Barca might as well concede a few goals. It is definitely something we should look to improve. And this midfield could potentially solve some of that. Of course, there are trade-offs that many will point to. This midfield does not have a natural number 10. No Dani Olmo, no Fermin Lopez. And you know, that matters for Hansi Flick's system. Especially because Fermin has exploded in this team. 30 goal contributions this season. I don't really think that is something we can ignore. And I completely understand why many believe he should start. Now yes, Fermin can also play from the left, but with Rafinha there, that's unlikely. And while I still think Fermin has some inconsistency in the biggest games, he is constantly improving. So I'm not saying this has to be Barca's midfield, but I do think it's one we should seriously consider for certain games. Very eager to hear what you think about Barca's midfield situation. The core, I would say, is incredible, but at the same time, Pedri, Frenkie, Olmo and probably also Gavi are all somewhat injury prone. So this luxury problem Barca supposedly have in midfield looks much better on paper than in reality. For all we know, these three might not even stay fit at the same time. Still, I think it's a fascinating discussion. When you consider how to mix player profiles in midfield, when we are at our best, you often see it in the midfield. We have like a special control and creativity. Gavi's return has seriously opened up some discussions. Because what is actually Barca's best midfield right now? Is it Pedri and Frenkie still combined with a pure number 10 like Fermin Lopez? Or is there a way Barca can play Pedri, Frenkie and Gavi together? And maybe that is the type of midfield we should use for the biggest games and not all games. Again, eager to hear what you think. Let me know in the comment section below.